Well, good Saturday morning, and welcome to episode 249 of Hobby Hotline on Bench Clear Media this morning. I am joined by Mike Junkwags Hero and Uncle Godfather Rich Klein. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you? That intro always fires me up. I love it.
I'm so pumped. I know.
I had an exciting morning. I went to turn on the TV in our house this morning, and we discovered after a long talk with our cable company, we needed new boxes. The last boxes they sent us never got registered. So after a year, the boxes went bad, and we're now getting new boxes. Hopefully, they register them at Frontier, so we don't have another surprise Saturday morning with no cable.
So you've been stealing cable for a year?
I've been paying for it. If I've been stealing it, I would tell them, please send me back the money I send you. That would be very nice.
Um, Mike, how's your hobby week been?
Good. Quiet. I'm trying to selling off some cards that I have amassed over the years that no longer fit into my collection, and saving money now for the national. So I haven't been buying much.
I think we're going to talk a little national later, but I know a lot of people are saving their dollars for a purchase there. Um, and I made a little purchase, but I'm still holding out for my 33 Gaudi Moberg in a low condition if anybody has one. A couple good mornings. Philly Joe. We got Bo. We got Mad City. We got Ruben. And we have Mark. Fly through those one more time. So, guys, a couple topics that we want to dive into this week. The first one I just wanted to touch on because I think it's a little bit of a bigger topic than the specific story. But evidently, there was a promotional break done by Fanatics, and they do this with different athletes and different people, and they'll bring a box of cards and open it up and film it. And they did a promotional break with a soccer player. I believe it's Antoine Griezmann, if I pronounced that correctly, and it was 2023 Bowman Sterling. And some of the top chase cards in that box are cut autographs, including one of the, if not the number one chase card, being a Jackie Robinson cut auto. Well, in this promotional video, shoot, break, whatever you want to call it, that card was pulled by Antoine, the soccer player. So, or, is it a coincidence? Does this mean that the companies can pick a hot box if they want? Um, you know, does this mean that there's any truth to the breakers that people, think get better boxes? Or is this just a complete coincidence that is really just a one in a million coincidence? Rich, what do you think?
Well, I want to attack this from a different way. When I was writing for Sports Collectors Daily, I did box reviews for about 7 years. And only twice did I not get what I was supposed to get in the box. And to me, that's all I ever asked for. But there was one box in particular, I think it was 2014 Topps Allen and Ginter. By the way, I did not get the super high-end Topps boxes. I think the value of the box I got was capped at about $200. So, but I get this box, and it has two Alex Avila relic cards in it. Like one's the framed and one's the not. And the response I got on Sports Collectors Daily is, don't they ever send Rich anything good? And so, as a box reviewer, that had a pretty good audience, I would have loved to have gotten good stuff, and I never did. And I shouldn't say I never did. I did sometimes, and those were very appreciated when I got those hits. But they came at about a rate you would expect for all the boxes I opened. And, as long as that comes up, I'm fine with that. And I want to read something. A good friend of mine, Mike Mowry, who has a store in Bryant, Arkansas, posted this on Facebook. Card World of Bryant strikes again. A Wander Franco Shimmer Refractor rookie autograph number 2 of 5 and a Victor Wembayana Orange Chrome Prospects autograph out of 25 were both pulled in his store this week. He's got a little store in Bryant, Arkansas. It is not backyard breaks. It is not a professional athlete. He got 2 cards that were multi-$1,000 cards out of his packs. And to me, that's a sign that, yeah, maybe you have to be careful. But for most collectors, they're not going to worry about Bowman Sterling. They bought boxes with reasonable price levels, and they got great hits. And I think that's what most collectors really want.
Yeah,
Mike?
Don's Sports Card Center in Portland, Maine also gets some big hits in their store, and it's Maine. There's nothing big happening. Nobody's looking to see what happens at Don's Sports Card Center. It's a great shop, by the way. Very little social media presence. And I'm looking at White Sox Tom's comment. That was a step up. The box was already open. If you could highlight that, Danny. I had heard that the box was already open. The only clip I've seen it appeared to me that they had just edited out the opening of the box. So I don't know. I don't know what Tom.
It's hard to tell, and I don't know.
Yeah. So I think that this is worse for Topps or Fanatics than other people are saying. People seem to think this is a great marketing coup for Topps, that they put this in intentionally. I think this looks bad for them, not because it looks like they have intentionally placed a hot box in a big public break, but I think it reduces the value of the unopened boxes that are out there, and it upset LCSs and other people that their boxes are less valuable now.
Philly Joe makes an interesting comment.
That is a great comment.
In this case, the box was fixed. I have no problem with it because it was a marketing break and people didn't, quote, pay for the box. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, a backyard breaks, you're paying for something. If they are getting hot boxes, that would be different. I guess in a marketing video, you can do what you want if that's the case. But I agree with Mike. This seems to have backfired one way or another. I don't see anybody rushing to buy more Bowman Sterling because of this.
They also pulled the Trout number 25. I think that was an autograph, which is another big pull card. If you're alleging conspiracy on this, I love a good conspiracy theory. I've watched some videos on this, and it's entertaining. I love it, but I just think that there are too many people that would need to be involved somehow for it to actually come out.
If Michael Rubin's going to do a shoot, he doesn't just say to somebody, "Make sure I have a hot box."
Maybe, but is he paying them extra to keep them quiet? How does it never come out?
I don't know, Rich.
I want to tell a different story. When I was still at Beckett back in
the day, this is what I wanted to hear.
We got I think the first year Panini did a National Treasures box in football. The biggest hit out of the box was some card, like at the time worth $20,000 or $25,000. And we would do the box breaks. We would post them on YouTube. This was, they were 10-minute breaks, and we pulled the biggest hit out of the box. And it was a card worth like $25,000. And you should have heard the reaction at the time. And, most of the boxes I was involved with breaking had normal stuff in it, nothing special. To me, a hit was a hit was a hit. We did not know there was anything good in there. We had no clue going in. They were not telling us. And so I think we ended up auctioning the card off for some charity. And, dealing with it that way and saying, okay, this is how we have to deal with it. But it does happen. People get hits. I mean, and not just the big hits. I mean, it was a store. Dave and Adams had that chase for the Drew Jones Superfractor. I don't think the store that got it was one of the stores that were best known. They took the $250,000, and rightly so. But I don't think that would have been where it was going to be planned to go if you really wanted to plan it. So, I love it. Like you, I love conspiracy theories, but sometimes things just happen. And I like Philly Joe's comment that we did not pay for it on a lot of levels. So, if it makes the athlete feel better, great. And one other thing I wanted to talk about with Beckett is, and I'm going to throw this in now.
Yeah.
They made, I'm going to call it a little bit of a under the radar hire. We have talked on this show about how Beckett needs to improve their marketing, their PR, their presence out there. Well, Kevin Isaacson, one of the first moves he made as a CEO was to hire PR guru Laurie Goldberg. Lori in the 90s was the PR director or the marketing director for both Action Packed and then moved to Pinnacle before they went bankrupt. And I believe she's done things like Animal Planet and Disney and other high-level places since then. So she knows marketing. And that was one of the very first hires Kevin Isaacson made. And I think if anybody can get Beckett to where their marketing and PR needs to go, it's Lori. So kudos to Kevin for a really good hire on that. And and kudos to Lori, who really didn't need or want to work anymore, for taking this on just for fun, so to speak. And
it's quite a challenge for fun.
Well, yeah, but she likes PR. She likes marketing. And one of the great things about Lori is we were having a DM conversation, and she knew enough at the end of the conversation to say, "And thank you for all you do for the community as part of your synagogue show." So she knows. That's what I'm saying. She instead of just being like she knows what to talk about to what people, and that's why it's very promising to have her involved. Because I don't want to say she can fix it by herself, but she can probably guide them to get into a better PR position.
Well, I don't know her, but I can think everybody can agree that their PR has been poor, to say the least, the last couple of years. So, as Bob just said, that sounds promising. Now, Rich, I have promised to throw the mic to you, and while you're speaking on Laurie, you have something else.
Yeah, one thing, we play a lot of inside baseball on this show. And I think last week the big topic, or one of the main topics, was the Panini break-in, which was an important thing, especially for people who, have cards sitting at Panini waiting for redemptions, or people who work there who got surprisingly a couple days off they didn't expect. I have usually Sunday morning lunch with a good friend of mine, and he comes up and he's involved in the hobby. He's at the Dallas card shows. He does stuff, and we were talking, and he didn't know one thing about the Panini break-in. And he's involved with the hobby. I think sometimes we forget as a hobby, because we get so involved with the inside baseball, that there's a lot of collectors that just want to collect. They don't want to do anything more than collect. They don't want to know, they want to buy a Topps box at Walmart or Target for $20 if they don't have an LCS near them, like I'm fortunate. Buy some cards, maybe buy some stuff on eBay. I know Bo does great selling cards at $1.50 free shipping on eBay. I'm sure a lot of the people who buy cards from him, I know he sold a Topps Major League debut Narcisco Elvira this week for $1.50 plus shipping, and Mr. Elvira has passed away, so that was for a team collector. And there are people who just want to collect. And I think sometimes we all lose sight. We're going to talk about this with the National. I think we sometimes lose sight that 98% of the collectors don't really care. We just want to have fun. And that, all this inside baseball is great. And I love talking, and trust me, I love talking inside baseball.
Yes.
But I think sometimes you want to talk like the grandstand level too. Like the fans at the bleachers at Yankee Stadium. Or the bleacher bums at Wrigley Field. A lot of those people, Bill Veeck once said, the intelligence of your baseball fan is directly proportional to how far away they are from the field.
It's a great quote.
So I just wanted to talk about that.
And Bo made a great point that most collectors don't even know there's social media in the hobby. I actually think that's true. I've had this conversation of what percentage of the hobby is actually active in social media. And I would say, the hobby is skewing younger every year, but I still think it's well under a third of the hobby, and probably less than that.
And I just ran our most successful synagogue show about 2 weeks ago. And it would have been, I don't want to say, it wouldn't have been nearly as good in our old building because we had a much bigger room. But in this building, we drew 100 people for 2 days, and the room looked great. And there was a hum the whole time. And the dealers did very well. And I had one dealer give me, he usually ties a church, and I got a bunch of dealers who normally don't do the Dallas Card Show. And our good hobby friend Kyle Robertson was walking around, and he got to see dealer stuff. He bought a couple really high-powered cards from some of them. And one of them even gave instead, look, this is a synagogue, and I usually tithe as my church. I'm going to tithe you instead for my sales, which was a nice added surprise. But the point was, I guarantee you in that room, if we had probably 125 people walk in and out counting the dealers, maybe 10 really knew what was going, maybe 10 really follow the hobby media socially. And the rest were just there to buy nickel, dime, quarter, 50-cent, dollar, $5, $10 cards. And by the way, this one guy sold a couple cards pre-war, let's say, I think they were Sporting News, 1916 Sporting News. He sold both a Gandil and an Eddie Sicati. So needless to say, he had a very good show. So he also made sure we got extra money. So I appreciate that too.
How often do you do the synagogue show?
I do it twice a year.
Okay.
This year it'll be just like last year, Memorial Day weekend and Labor Day weekend. Okay. And we do it Sunday and Monday because I don't think as a synagogue we can quite get away with it on Saturday.
Probably not. Well, very cool. Thank you for sharing. You had me scared, but I think that's an excellent point.
I told you in the green room you had nothing to worry about.
I was born neurotic and I've only gotten better at it. So anyway, so thank you. It's an excellent point. And I think part of this show is to walk that line between the collectors and the inside baseball conversation. And so one of the reasons that I like doing this show is the collecting. So there's a bunch of people that made comments that I think agree with you, Rich. We have Bowman saying hello.
Happy belated birthday to Danny.
Yes, Danny's now older than he was 2 days ago.
And I turn older tomorrow.
Happy early birthday to you,
and
Rich.
If you remember, John Newman last year posted the Snuckers birthday card of me being 100.
Rich, I have no idea and was not going to do that. But since you brought it up,
you had that ready. You had that ready way too fast.
I had a surprise for you as well. This was not a one-way street. Well, happy. One of the next topic I really wanted to touch on, and I want to take a step back. MLS soccer, if you don't know, it has been around for 25 years. And David Beckham, you might remember in 2007, made a little bit of noise when he came over from Europe, and he was a real celebrity as much as a soccer player, and went to Los Angeles, a big city. Well, now we have Messi at 35 years old signing a gigantic contract in Miami, and hopefully Chris Harris will join in here. But the point that I really wanted to bring up is how this contract is structured, because this might be the future, and we've seen some contracts structured a little bit more creatively with salary caps. But Messi is going to get a flat salary somewhere in the $50 million range a year, a hair more, a hair less, depending on how they play with the salary cap. So $50 million a year just in salary. He's also getting a percent of the Apple TV season pass package for the whole league. He's getting a percent of all the Miami shirt sales, and he's getting an ownership stake in the team. So, at this point, are we really just going to start giving, teams to players, or, how much, do you even give away in a contract anymore? And has it gotten out of control? When you hear a 35-year-old player coming over, even though, Miami sold out their tickets for the rest of the year and everything else, there's only 10 players in the world that I think earn $50 million a year, North American sports also. So, Mike, I guess your thoughts on the contract, him coming over?
Well, first of all, that's basically the same contract we have for doing this show, so it seems right. I mean, is Messi good? I don't know anything about soccer, but anytime players can get more of the money from the billionaire owners, I think it's a win. Are they going to raise ticket prices for him? Maybe, but if people are willing to pay it, then that's just the way it is. I don't follow soccer, so I'm not going to say anything intelligent about soccer. Some would say I don't say anything intelligent about anything, which is fine. But yeah, I mean, if he can get the money, if he can get ownership and increased revenue from Apple TV, good for him.
I like that. Messi is a Messi. This comment's interesting. That this already kind of happens in the NBA, where team control is essentially given away to the superstars. Well, there's some truth there. I mean, LeBron James, let's be honest, for many years, Michael Jordan too, pretty much picked, who they played with, and got as much money as physically possible in the salary cap. Is this any different?
Danny, just to correct you, Michael Jordan actually did not get as much money from the salary cap as he could have, because he was making so much at the time from endorsements. He knew that he could reduce his salary, make it a team-friendly salary. Tom Brady did the same thing. Once you're at a certain level, you don't have to make as much in salary.
But in his last season, he made...
Some athletes do need the salary, but others do not. And they actually reduce their salary so they can spend more money. The teams can spend more money to bring better parts, adjoining parts for them to play with.
But in Jordan's last season, he made $33 million, which was a huge percentage of the salary cap for the Bulls. His last season for the Bulls, sorry.
Yeah, I wasn't talking Wizards, so both correct on that. Hobby Hotline checks have been shipped via FedEx. Miami made a savvy move. League must capitalize, go for broke, all chips on the table. Well, that's interesting, and that's part of what I was saying. After 25 years, is this, it's very interesting. And this is a comment I very much agree
with. Yes.
Ohtani will break the bank overall, including endorsements. Well, Rich, this speaks to your point. Is there going to be an athlete, in the next 10 years that has more endorsement possibilities worldwide than Shohei Ohtani could have if he ends up, in a major city or anywhere next year?
Well, he's already in the Los Angeles area. It's kind of hard to be. I mean, where else is a major city other than L.A.?
He's in L.A. Light.
LA, right, but it's still LA. I mean, you can go and do things in LA. The fact that Mike Trout also playing there doesn't do a lot of endorsements is something Mike Trout chose to do, but he's making enough in salary too. All these players at that level have generational wealth, and so it's up to them. Do they want to make more money, or do they want to as a salary, or do they want to take a little less money, understand their investments, carry them through? And do it that way, the way I suggested a Brady or a Jordan when he was the Bulls did it, or things like that.
So in a salary cap sport, if you're making enough endorsements, and baseball's not a salary cap sport for Ohtani, but whether it's Messi or whether it's Brady, Mike, is there a responsibility to the key player not to suck up all the salary cap, or no?
No. If the player can get the money. But the challenge is, look at, like you mentioned, Tom Brady. You're unlikely to win a championship if you're taking up a huge chunk of the team's money, especially if there's a salary cap. But if you just want the money, then go for it. You're just going to upset your teammates. Yeah, soccer's a snooze fest, Dewey.
But now I'm with you, Dewey. NFL average salary for every quarterback, every good quarterback, the ones we all, I'm going to use the word invest, and that may not be the right word, but it's a quarterback league, and every time you turn around, the next quarterback is making more than the previous one before. It looks like, I believe Mahomes may be getting a $50 million a year contract pretty soon. And I know the NFL plays various games. They play various games about guaranteed money, how much is guaranteed, how much is not. So they may say $50 million against the cap, but it may not be for the length of the contract. They may not even be there at the end of the contract. So there are certain things that are different with an NFL contract versus a baseball or a basketball contract, but there is dead money in NFL contracts too, depending on how long it is and all that. And the NFL teams have cap experts. Their job is actually to monitor the salary cap.
Yeah.
And by the way, Anaheim is close enough to LA. You can drive up to LA on a day off.
Lamar Jackson's contract is for more than $50 million already.
and being the Baltimore rep here, I can say one of the biggest conversations in Baltimore leading up to his contract was, how do you fairly pay a guy to keep him and not have to strip down the rest of the roster all the way around? You have other guys coming up for contracts, rookies getting off rookie contracts where you need to pay them real money. You can end up with a quarterback and very little talent around. And I think that's one of the concerns. And so, is it worth it? And somebody said the MLS should push all their chips in, and try to make a name for themselves. From a lot of people in the comments, the MLS, and Mike, we were talking earlier, is it the fourth biggest sport, fifth biggest sport? Do they need to do something? Is it publicity? And is that okay for them or any other team to sign a guy just for publicity?
I'm not sure that they're fourth or fifth even. And I'm not a Formula One guy, but Formula One, I believe, is like the number 2 sport in the world. It's not big in America, but is it big enough in America to be bigger than MLS? I don't know. Truly don't. But I have friends who swear by.
Soccer's definitely bigger than Formula One around the world.
Yes, I agree. That's why I said it's number 2. I believe it's number 2, and the NBA is right there, close by globally. Soccer's definitely bigger. But where does MLS sit compared to Formula One?
Well, Messi led Argentina to the World Cup last year, and he had a great game in the finals, and he had a really good tournament. And he's the best known player. I think he's got all-time goal records. He's also 35, 36 years old.
Yep.
This is, as I said, he's going to have generational wealth anyway, but this is really a chance to really sink in and lock in all that generational wealth. And, I'm glad for him, and I'm glad. And, David Beckham came to America 2007, and it definitely helped MLS soccer. But I think Beckham was well known, but I think Messi's better known around the world than Beckham. And that's pretty impressive because David Beckham was really well known. And he was a great player. And he was probably a little nearer his peak than what Messi is. And still, it boosted the sport a little, but not a lot. But I will tell you, we talked to Chris in our group chat. Topps has the license. My question is, how quickly can Topps get out their Messi cards?
Well, I think Topps now is going to get into soccer very quickly because Messi could be on the field or the pitch. I'm learning within the next month or two. So. And here, this is an interesting comment. I was more aware of Beckham than I am of Messi.
That's wonder how much Beckham was famous off the field.
There we go. That's
right.
Plus, he was married to somebody pretty famous too.
There
it is, the Spice Girl influence.
So but this gets back to, if you have an NFL team, if you have an NBA team, are you giving one player, if the rules allow, ownership in the team, percent of TV, percent of of merchandising? At what point is a player an owner or is a player a player?
This has happened before. Mario Lemieux took over ownership of the Pittsburgh Penguins at one point when nobody else wanted to. He actually took over ownership. So it does happen. It's happened officially. And, now Michael Jordan, I believe, owns the Charlotte Bobcats, or he's a majority owner.
Charlotte Hornets.
So it is going to happen more and more where players are going to get more involved in ownership. Every time I look around, and I'm going to exaggerate a little, it seems like you hear about how these generational wealth players are investing in various enterprises. And I think, ownership has its privileges, and ownership also has its responsibilities. And most of these people have more money than we'll all see in our lifetime. And it's fine.
Yep. Big Harv says, if Arch Manning is close to as good as his uncles and ends up in a large market, does he end up making over $100 million a year? Well, that's and somebody made the same comment on Victor Wembanyama. We're moving into this next generation. Are we going to get to the place? Nobody ever said a player would make $1 million a year till Nolan Ryan did. Are we in one generation going to go from $1 million a year to $100 million a year?
We might. It's, Nolan Ryan's contract was 1980 when he signed for the $1 million a year.
That's a couple generations, Danny.
All right. Well, I had a birthday yesterday. I'm older now.
I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now.
Yeah, exactly. I remember Pele playing for the New York Cosmos. He drew a crowd. Still going to take time for soccer to rise in the USA.
I went to some of those games that Pele played for the Cosmos. Giant Stadium was rocking.
I was about to say, what was the atmosphere?
It was rocking. I mean, because the Cosmos were not just Pele. They had Franz Beckenbauer, who led West Germany to the '74 World Cup. They had other great players from Brazil. To show how old I am now, they had a goaltender by the name of Shep Messing. He was an American. And I knew people who dated Shep Messing. And like on one of the last trips to New Jersey, 15 years ago, I met people whose kids were dating his daughters. It was like I was laughing when I heard that. It's like everybody I know has dated a Messing along the way.
Did it make you want to go to more Cosmos games because Pele was there?
It made me want to go to more games because the atmosphere was so fun. There was a great ESPN documentary on the Cosmos, which I definitely would recommend anybody who wanted to know what the Cosmos experience was like in those days, watch.
Mike, would you go to a soccer match if Messi was going to be near you now? Or does it not move the meter for you at all?
It definitely would not move the meter for me. I have zero interest in soccer whatsoever. But if I had a friend and I happened to be at their house and they said, hey, let's go catch a game at Foxborough, although somebody said he won't play at Foxborough because of the turf, then I would go, sure, but it's not something that would interest me.
James Bond says, hello, Mike. Did not forget you were on the bird sheet.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
That's between you. That's between you and Agent 007 there.
Yes, that's right.
Stoned Collector, in 10 years, 100 million will likely not be a lot of money. Well,
it'll still be a lot of money to me, folks.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think it'll be a lot of money. I get the point that over time, there's a devaluation, but I think in 10 years, that will still be a whole lot of money.
Mark's got it right
Soccer's
here.
Been the next big thing for 50 years. Somebody called them Dippin' Dots. You see that this, Dippin' Dots were the ice cream of the future, for 30 years. Soccer, somebody called the Dippin' Dots of sports. That cracked me up.
I love Dippin' Dots.
Well, now they're just there. They're not the ice cream of the future. They're just ice cream.
Hey, whenever I go to a Frisco Rough Riders game, they have Dippin' Dots ice cream, and it's wonderful. It melts. It becomes like ice cream when you eat it. It's wonderful.
I remember reading about it 20 years ago and thinking I was so excited for it. And then I had it. And it was such a letdown.
Yeah. I love Dippin' Dots. If Beckham couldn't bring popularity to the LA Galaxy, then soccer will never take off in the U.S. I wonder if the World Cup, 25 years, and this is one of the good points. Mookie says it's all about TV, streaming live sports globally. That's why Apple is paying up. The gold rush is on. Well, Mike, this goes back to your comment, about popularity worldwide. Are we going to start changing popularity because of the access to streaming sports that we never got the access to?
Nope, because it's such a niche market. Where
I'm not talking about any sport that we now have access to.
What do you mean?
Like if will cricket get more popular? Will F1 get more popular because we can stream more, we can see more?
But so few people have Apple TV. What is it, like 10 million people? That is such a small number. And then you have to actually surf around. I have Apple TV. I've never seen a sporting event on there. You have to surf around to find sports. And then they have dozens of different sports to choose from. It's just not easy. They would have to really force it on their viewers that are in Apple TV. It's not like in the 1960s where there were 3 channels. Were there 3 channels? I wasn't allowed.
There were 3 major channels. And then, in New Jersey growing up, we had actually like 7 channels because New York had more stations. So CBS, NBC, and ABC. And then we had UHF. Then we had Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11, then PBS at Channel 13, and then 3 ultra high frequency stations. And that, and through the 70s, that was all you needed.
Here's one that's actually, Dewey, I don't know if you're trying to be funny or serious, but I think this is a fair question. Pickleball is better than soccer. Well, pickleball is growing faster than any other sport, believe it or not. Is pickleball going to become a legit major sport in this country? People are playing it like crazy.
Well, it's easy to go from zero to where pickleball is now, and that's what they're measuring. Is it's growing incredibly fast because it went from nothing to what it is now. Soccer, to be fast growing like that, can't, because there are already millions of soccer fans in America. Vintage Card Collector has the best comment here. Their family doesn't follow soccer. You just had it up.
Yep.
Doesn't follow soccer at all, but they're sports fans. They live in a city with an MLS team, and now their son wants to go when Messi plays there. That's important. Yeah. But that's only in person. They're not watching the games necessarily. He doesn't talk about watching it on TV.
Well, isn't it the cart before the horse? You get hooked and then you watch.
Fair.
Well, I've never played or watched pickleball, but I will tell you, I have a good friend of mine who lost 3 front teeth taking a face plant playing pickleball. So you can actually get hurt playing pickleball.
Well, then, this will be interesting. Celebrity pickleball may take off. We'll see which celebrity loses a couple teeth, I guess. And then comments are coming in faster than I can keep up, guys. Cable TV, flip through a few channels and find a game. Now you have to figure out which streaming platform a game of sport is on.
It's harder to watch sports now on TV than it was even 5 years ago.
It's a fair comment, and this was earlier. I think streaming is actually hurting sports. I want to get your guys' thought on that comment. Is it hurting sports, or because I don't know, less people are going to the game, or more money's coming in from TV?
Fewer people are watching the games. If the NBA is on ABC and ESPN, TNT, that's easier. But when the games are only found on Peacock and Apple TV and Paramount TV Plus, or whatever these channels are called, that's bad for those sports. It's good for them in the short term because they're collecting tons of licensing fees. But it's like baseball. Major League Baseball for decades now has only had their playoff games on starting at like 8:30 p.m., which is good for them then because they bring in more money. But in the long term, they're losing young fans, and those young fans don't become middle-aged fans like us.
And I agree with you. One of the things is, and a few months ago, and it'll run sometime in the fall, Dr. Beckett and I taped what's going to be on Netflix, and we taped. And one of the things I brought up was that this guy was using 1989 and talking about kosher pickleball sounds great. Talking about baseball cards in 1989. And that was the last year NBC had the game of the week. In 1990, baseball chased the money, went to CBS. Instead of a game every week, they didn't even start till June, the game of the week. And then it was on and off. And the effect was not immediate. But to Mike's point, I think the long-term effect of having games not on broadcast TV, and you don't have to have all the games on broadcast TV, but a couple times a week, and I know, and trust me, I do know the cable companies want to fill up their schedule, and having live broadcasting every night during the summer really helps them. And now you have the situation with Bally's where the cable companies aren't teaching them because Sinclair wanted too much money. So now you can't watch your own friggin' home. There's been 3 years since I've been able to watch a Texas Ranger game. 2020, I think September, Bally lost their contract with Frontier Communication. I can't watch a local game unless I go through streaming and pay extra money, and I'm already paying the cable company enough money. And the sports owners and the players also, sometimes in chasing the short-term dollars, forget that the long-term good you take a little less money and you make a heck of a lot more in the long run.
Mike, I think this speaks to what you were saying. 20 years ago, if I wanted to watch a Cubs game, I turned on WGN. Today, you are blacked out in the home team market. Some games are on Peacock. Some games are on Apple TV. couldn't agree more. And they don't do a great job of telling you how to find the games.
I mean, and that's why Fox has the baseball network, and they should figure out a way, the baseball national light, and they should figure out a way to get a Saturday afternoon each week during the season, or a prime time. When I say a prime time game, Fox doesn't have such a great prime time lineup. To be honest, they could have a weeknight game during the season. Eight begins 8 o'clock Eastern or 7 Eastern and whatever, and then you could have a game every night. You'd have a game you'd have 2 nights during the season, 2 days during the season. You'd be guaranteed where everybody could watch a game. A couple of years ago, when we were, in a sense, as a synagogue, we now have our new home, which I talked about. We were wandering in the desert, so to speak, of various places to have it. We had a very nice young lady by the name of Gina Miller, who's involved with FC Dallas and she's done media. And I asked the question, how are you televising your games? And she says, we televise half our games on Channel 21, which is one of those stations that is we'll call it a local station, because we understand Dallas-Fort Worth is not an area where a ton of people, it's one of the lowest, when cable was, before we changed the laws like maybe 10 years ago, Dallas-Fort Worth had the largest non-cable audience in the country. 31% of the people did not have cable. So getting soccer in front of the people who actually want to watch soccer was a great move. And I always point out that the more you show games to people who can watch it, and it's great. I mean, Kurt Smith, who was a writer for the Bush administration, for the Bush elder administration, he was a speechwriter. He always railed about, and I didn't think he was right in 1991 and 1992. You have to have this big network presence. He was right. You still have to have a network presence. Bo's talking about the problems trying to watch a game. And yes, and one other thing. I'm happy. I may be the only old timer happy with these new Manfred rules about speeding up the game.
I love them.
I'm
not an old timer though.
Having sat at Texas Stadium when it's the middle of friggin' summer and it's a 3-hour Ranger game, and the stadium is not domed, and it's 95 degrees, which is going to be in July and August. You don't want to sit there for 3 hours. And so I'm glad they're speeding up the game. I think that's important to speed up the game. Even the NFL is working on speeding up the game.
And Rich, to your point, in a lot of ways, talking about the streaming also, is that these companies are betting on my teenage kids being able to find the game streaming. This is a long play. I can't disagree with that. If you're trying to bring a younger demographic into it, you have to go to where they are. You're not going to convince them to go to where you are. That would be my perspective. Mike, I saw in the comments you get everything. Can you explain that?
I didn't understand what that meant, but then he followed up. This is Mark. He followed up with any Red Sox game with basic cable is what I think that went with. Yeah, we can watch any Red Sox game here in Maine.
So even if it's on Apple TV, you'll have it local?
I assume so. I've only ever watched games on NESN.
Do you have streaming NESN?
Yes.
You do? Now, and is that included with your regular package, so you can just go anywhere and watch?
I have the very cheap cable package that includes NESN. So it's the cheapest that includes NESN. And then I have a handful of streamers too, and I can watch them if they're on national TV. I can watch them on, John, short attention span society, and he's right. But we also can't have games that end at midnight. Playoff games, when every single playoff game ends at midnight, that's a big problem for the league long term. What I was talking about earlier, I love 220 games done by 9:30.
Yep.
When I was a kid, there were a lot of afternoon games, and even I would watch a lot of Braves games. I'm in Maine. They were on TBS every day, and I loved that. They were almost always in the afternoon, or you could find a Cubs game. Nowadays, they're all on late to optimize revenue for the league and the channels, and that's a great short-term play, bad long-term play.
Well, I like when, being on the East Coast, the West Coast games are actually almost watchable to the end sometimes. it's the last couple of years it's been hard to stay up for those late West Coast games, and now I can watch the whole game. Let's figure out a way to play a baseball game in 3 minutes. I think that is the video games, because my sons seem to simulate an entire season. Rich, why do we recline on this night but not all other nights?
John, I promise the next time you have me on your show, I'll be closer to the camera.
Okay. And there was a comment I wanted to get back to here. Where'd it go? Basically, yeah, I lost it there. But go ahead, Mike.
I lost it too. Oh, I remember. If you scroll up just a little bit, the one that mentions TNT and ESPN, I don't remember who said that. It is Mad City Brew. Sorry, I'd rather watch the NBA on Bally Sport than the Clowns on TNT or ESPN. Now, isn't Bally Sport?
Bally Sports is the local. Well, Bally Sports are the local. The TNT is the national games.
But isn't Bally losing their regional sports?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. They were owned by Sinclair. They're the ones that stopped paying a lot of people.
Yes.
So yes.
And Major League Baseball is bailing them out.
Yeah.
So Major League Baseball is understanding that fans need to see the games in some ways. So Major League Baseball is doing exactly what they should be doing.
Well, I think it's on the teams, to be honest with you. I know Major League Baseball has to do it overall, but if I'm a team and I sign a contract, with Bally's and Bally's can't provide it, it's on me to figure out a way to broadcast it.
1 Million Cubs Project says game lengths are now about the same as they were in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, up until the early 90s. Games now are as long as they were in like 1991. So, if you go to Templebird's comment, if you'd like speeding up games, you're not a true baseball fan. I strongly disagree. They got way out of hand and slow. And if you want more people following your sport, if you want the sport to survive in the current American landscape, you need to speed it up.
Absolutely. Somebody, that 70s card show says baseball is a social experience now. Beer sales are what matters. More tourists than the Angels Pro Shop buying Ohtani jerseys and sitting in the stands last game I went to. Well, that gets back to the original conversation, on the Messi contract. Our players going to want to start getting paid in percentage or merchandise over flat salaries when they're that level of player. All right, we got a Spectrum salesman. Sorry about that, Dewey.
And then 1 Million Cubs Project firing back at Foul 5 Ball with the overrated comments.
Yeah. This is one. TBS Braves games were the best early afternoon or morning games for the West Coast. I grew up on TBS Braves games. They were the only thing that I got consistently outside of the Orioles. So I grew up a Braves fan because of that. And I wonder if we've lost that a little bit. Oddly, more baseball was played in the decades as the time between innings and pitching changes has meant less baseball being played.
Fact. So did they reduce the number of innings or outs? Or is he just saying that there were more hits, more people on base back then? Baseball was more exciting.
Yeah,
I agree with John there, but it's the same amount of baseball. I'm trying to understand what John's trying to say.
It's a fact. Baseball fans have to understand they need to attract new fans and grow the game. 4 games aren't doing it. I think we all agree on that. We have an accounting question here, so we can cover accounting later. Baseball games are way too short, in my opinion. Well, I guess, part of it is, what do you guys think about the extra inning games? Because there was another walk-off last night with the Ghost Runner, and I thought that would be the one rule that would bother me the most, but it's kind of exciting in extra innings. Rich, what do you think of that Ghost Runner?
I think baseball, by the way, usually I'm just checking email or checking other things while I'm on, just in case I see something pop through. So that's the answer. But if somebody wants to do interesting wrong answers, I'm all in favor of that. And as I mentioned in our pre-show, I am waiting for somebody to pick up cards, that we get donated for the synagogue, So, so if I get a text or an email from him and I know I have to let him in. So that's really what I'm doing. And basically, it's fun. We're having a nice conversation, but I think we all basically agree that the more places you can watch things at a reasonable price for the consumer helps the sports long term, even if it doesn't put the money in the owners and players' pockets immediately. Sometimes taking a tad less is a good deal for the long term. If you listen to one of the podcasts Dr. Beckett and I had when we were doing ramblings, and I told the story, I walked into Jim's office and there was something where Rob Veras wanted something done. And I was like responsible. And Jim, I really don't want to do this. I'm not comfortable with Rich. In this case, just even if it's a bad deal, just make it. Rob and his 42 million cards are doing just fine. They're sponsors of Jim's podcast. It's Rob runs a great show at Burbank twice a year. I believe he's in Ontario in February, and he's going to be in the Anaheim Convention Center in Labor Day weekend. That kind of paid off. And so the point is that sometimes a deal you may not think is a good deal is a great deal in the long term if you're willing to play the long-term game instead of just pocketing as much money as you can right up front. And that's really more true for the owners and the players. Most players have a short career lifespan. They do need to make their money when they can make their money, with the exception of the Lionel Messis of the world. But your average NFL player has a career of three seasons.
Yeah.
You get money for 3 years and that's it. So for them, I understand why they would be in favor of taking as much as they can up front. And it needs to be get stuff. Understand, take a little less, bank some of your money. That way you should be able to live. Don't go clubbing each night, with a 3-year career lifespan. And it's a hard lesson when you're 22, but it's a lesson you need to learn.
I think Zach has a good point here. We're talking about collecting cards today. Why don't we get to the National? You've got it up there on the screen.
Yeah, and part of the conversation is when you are looking to buy cards, what types of players, what sports, what are you looking at if you're ever going to, go outside your comfort zone. So that was part of the angle I wanted to cover there. But for the biggest part of the card world and the Super Bowl of the card year is prep for the National. You guys both going?
Yes.
Yes.
In the chat room, definitely let us know if you're going. For those who have not been before, if you have questions, definitely let us know. Rich, what would be your one piece of advice for somebody doing a couple days at the National?
If you've never gone before and you budget X amount of money and you can afford to budget 2 to 3X that amount of money, budget 2 to 3X amount that money. that is really the first thing I would tell you. Budget money for the National, and your money, and whatever it is, you may walk into a dealer where you say, "Oh, I wish I had brought the money, 2X or 3X or 5X." And sometimes I know you can't, but if you can, by all means, bring more than you plan. I also tell people, wear comfortable shoes. You're going to be walking on hard concrete floors. And have fun. You're going to see things you never have before. And one thing I pick up is I always tell people, if it's your white whale, so what we use in the hobby, the term the white whale, which is your number one item that you're looking for, the odds are you will find it there. The other odds are that if it's a reasonable price, buy it when you see it. Because the odds are good if it's not something that you've seen before and the price point is good, and you say, "Oh, I have to think about it." The odds are it's not going to be there when you come back.
Yeah. A lot of people talking about the geography of the National. Is the new National Management Company going to start moving the venue and actually make it the National at the Midwest Major Show? Mike, do you have a problem with where they put the National?
Well, I'd like it to be in Portland, Maine. Ideally, that's really bringing a lot of people there. I think that in the center of the country it probably makes the most sense. You're going to get the most people there. That at least it's the easiest. But if you want, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking through this, probably LA, right? You're going to get more people in Southern California.
Well, wasn't Anaheim the most attended one ever?
That might make
I
sense.
believe so. Yeah, no.
Bob Boozle makes a good comment. Wear your deodorant. There's a lot of people in there.
Yes, and please do not bring a rolly bag the size of a a check bag through the aisles and take out everybody's legs.
Boston fan has a good question there. Finds it hard to spend more than $50 per card. Is it worth going for me if I'm looking for decent vintage? If you're looking to spend no more than $50 per card, you can probably find some stuff in the vintage bins and the bargain bins, but it's a big.
The prices aren't so different than the rest of the world. That's the one thing I would say to people.
Yeah.
Is you'll find more right in front of you, but you won't necessarily, it's not like it's a half price, a swap meet or something like that. So, if you can find a card online, you can probably find it at the National, but the prices won't be terribly different. This is one I like. In 2026, will the National be renamed the Fanatics National?
The Fanatical.
The Fanatical, that's exactly. I've heard that a lot from a lot of people. Rich is done negotiating, so he's back from his holdout.
Zach and Porter has a great comment. Don't know if I'll buy one card at the National, just going to see friends. I didn't spend a ton last year, and I won't. I'll spend even less this year.
Well, my wife chose to get COVID the week before the National last year, so the doctor told me not to go. Which I understand everybody got COVID at the National last year anyway, so I just would have contributed to the spread.
When we got home, I got all the phone calls. Chicago has direct flights less than 2.5 hours from like 70% of the nation's population. I think that's why Chicago and Cleveland have been getting most of the Nationals recently. But, I understand the West Coast has a legitimate gripe, and Atlantic City was not a good representation.
Well, one thing you have to understand about going to the West Coast is many of the dealers are East and Midwest dealers. And many of them are getting to the age that they don't want to travel to the West Coast.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to get dealers. As I said, Rob Veras is having a show Labor Day weekend at the Anaheim Convention Center.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge.
Well, I think, Rich, I was asking before, wasn't Anaheim the largest attended National ever?
Yes, and probably the second largest one was Atlantic City last year. And if it wasn't that, it was Chicago in 2021.
Post-pandemic, yeah.
Post-pandemic. So.
All right. Any other? I have heard that several places. Fanatics Spine 70s Card Show. I believe that's.
John is a free agent. He's able
John the
to
sellout.
sell. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
I just thought you and John. Didn't you and
shopping.
John just do a hobby think tank episode this week?
On Beckett, yeah. Last week. Was it this week? Man.
It was It was this week. I actually watched that one.
Well, it was the two of them.
You know what we have not talked about is we're leading off Hobby Palooza in 2 weeks.
Well, that's where I was headed. As we head towards our winding down here, Hobby Palooza and Bench Clear, where we are today, it does a 2-day. I think this is year 3 or 4 that they've done this, and it's all day Saturday, all day Sunday. I believe it's 24 hours of hobby content. And Hobby Hotline will lucky enough to be leading off the Saturday show, is my understanding. So I think that's subject to change, but as of right now, our regular Saturday show that weekend, which is 2 weeks, I believe, will be part of Hobby Palooza. So just wanted to give a shout out to that I know there will be some other shows that'll be on that as well, and we'll talk about that. But
you should talk about your pet project, Hobby News Daily, having a show too.
Hobby News Daily also will have the first show on Sunday, and so you'll get to hear from a lot of our writers and content creators and stuff like that. So very honored for that. And Hobby News Daily is also the media partner for Hobby Palooza this year. So happy to be the official media partner for that. Thank you, Rich.
And
And Hobby News Daily.
And to
Hobby
give
News Daily had
Daily a plug. One of my, sorry, Mike. Say
You're
it,
good.
Mike. Sorry, I stepped on you twice.
You're my fault, Rich. I was just going to say Hobby News Daily had a great guest last night on the Hot Corner. It was me. Spoiler alert.
Oh, I watched that last night.
Yes.
I thought it was Mike. I thought based on the comments I heard it was going to be Mike Summer, who would have been just as good.
Probably better.
I think Mike Summer thought it was himself too. All right, guys. Have a wonderful hobby week. I want to congratulate our friend Rex on opening a second location. They do a great job at the sports card shop, as we know. So just a shout out and congratulations to them. Guys, anything else before we say goodbye?
I had fun. This was fun. We talked about real topics for real people. And I think that's what, sometimes we do the inside baseball. But as I point out, 98%, my friend came in, which is why I left. And I don't think he cares about most of these topics. He buys and sells dime quarter dollar cards. That's, he does it as a hobby. And that's what most of us do in this hobby.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Have a wonderful hobby week. And we will see you next Saturday on Bench Clear for episode 250.